Cumans, nomadic warriors of the Eurasian steppes. The Cumans, also known as Polovtsi in Rus's and Kipchaks in Eastern sources, were a Turkic nomadic group from Central Asia. They formed the western branch of the Cuman-Kipchak Confederation and were known for their language, Cuman, which is one of the best documented early Turkic languages. Throughout their history, many Cumans settled in regions west of the Black Sea. They became deeply integrated into the societies they joined, influencing the politics and elite classes of Kievan Rus', the Galicia-Volhynia Principality, the Second Bulgarian Empire, the Kingdom of Serbia, the Kingdom of Hungary, Moldavia, the Kingdom of Georgia, and the Byzantine Empire, among others. By the 12th century, the Cumans had established themselves as a dominant force in the Pontic steppe, wielding influence through military might and diplomatic engagements. Their society was organized in a tribal confederation, which allowed them to mobilize quickly and adapt to various political landscapes. The Cumans were known for their skills in horseback riding and archery, making them formidable opponents in warfare. Throughout their history, the Cumans engaged in both conflict and alliances with their neighbors. They often served as mercenaries in the armies of larger states, including the Byzantine Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary. Their involvement in regional politics extended to intermarriages with European royalty, which helped to cement alliances and influence local succession politics. The Cumans were also notably involved in the Fourth Crusade and played a crucial role in the establishment of the Second Bulgarian Empire. The decline of the Cumans began in the early 13th century, culminating with the Mongol invasions led by Genghis Khan. The Mongol onslaught devastated the Cuman Confederation, leading many Cumans to flee westward into Hungary and the Balkans, where they were eventually assimilated into local populations. Despite their eventual disappearance as a distinct group, the legacy of the Cumans is evident in the cultural and genetic makeup of Eastern European populations. Chapter 1. Origins and History of the Cumans. 9th century. The Cumans are first mentioned in historical records. They are a nomadic Turkic people originating from the steppes of Central Asia. 10th century. The Cumans migrate westward due to pressure from other nomadic groups and the expanding Khitan Empire. They settle in the Pontic-Caspian steppe between the Caspian and Black Seas. The Cumans form a confederation known as the Cuman-Kipchak Confederation with the Kipchaks, another Turkic tribe. They dominate the steppes from the Volga River to the Danube. 1068. Battle of the Alta River. Cumans defeat the Kievan Rus' 1160. Cumans begin to raid the territories of Kievan Rus', the Byzantine Empire, and Hungary. Their influence extends over much of Eastern Europe. 1091. The Cumans play a significant role in the Battle of Livonian, assisting the Byzantine Empire in defeating the Pechenegs. 1205. Cuman light cavalry contributed to Kaloyan's crushing victory over the Latin Crusaders in the Battle of Adrianople. 1223. The Cumans suffer a significant defeat at the Battle of the Kalka River against the Mongols. This marks the beginning of their decline. 1241. The Mongol invasion of Europe forces many Cumans to flee westward. Some find refuge in Hungary, where they are granted asylum by King Bela IV in exchange for military service. 1260s. The Cumans in Hungary convert to Christianity and gradually assimilate into Hungarian society. 1293. Codex Cumanicus, a Kipchak dictionary written for Latins. 14th century. The Cuman identity and political structures fade as they are absorbed by surrounding cultures and states. However, their legacy persists in place names and in the cultural memory of regions they once inhabited. Origins and early history of the Cumans. The Cumans originated from the Turkic-speaking tribes of the Eurasian steppes, particularly from the region around the modern-day areas of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and southern Siberia. The original homeland of the Cumans is unknown before their eventual settlement in the Eurasian steppes' western part. Their emergence as a distinct group occurred in the late 10th to early 11th century CE, as they began to coalesce into a formidable nomadic confederation. The Kun, a tribe mentioned in both Chinese and Islamic historical texts, were part of the complex ethno-linguistic landscape of Central Asia. Chinese sources placed the Kun north of the Toul River, near the territories influenced by the Khitans, a group linked to the expansion that might have displaced the Kun. Al-Marwazi, a 12th century Islamic scholar, recorded that the Kun originated from the northern borders of China, specifically the land of Khitai, an area associated with the Khitans. They migrated westward, displacing the Shari people in their move. Additional historical accounts, such as those by the Syrian historian Yakut and Armenian historian Matthew of Edessa, contribute to the narrative by mentioning the Kun in the context of broader Central Asian geopolitics and describing physical characteristics of related groups, highlighting their interactions and movements across regions. These sources collectively portray the Kun as part of the dynamic and intermingled histories of Turkic and Mongolic peoples, navigating changes in power, territory, and identity in medieval Central Asia. The early history of the Cumans is marked by their migration due to climatic changes, pressure from neighboring tribes, and their pursuit of new grazing lands for their livestock, which was central to their nomadic lifestyle. By the mid-11th century, this migration propelled them westward across the Volga River into the vast grasslands of the Pontic steppe, which covers modern-day Ukraine and southern Russia. As the Cumans moved into these new territories, they displaced or assimilated various other Turkic and Ugric tribes, such as the Kipchaks, with whom they are often closely associated in historical texts. Their skills in horse breeding and warfare facilitated their expansion and dominance over this extensive area, establishing them as a significant power in the Eurasian steppe. Appearance of the Cumans. The appearance of the Cumans, a Turkic nomadic group, is complex and varied, as described by historical sources, genetic evidence, and artistic depictions. While some medieval European sources, like Adam of Bremen, describe them as fair-skinned and blonde, known as the blonde ones, this represents only one perspective on their physical characteristics. The appearance of the Cumans, as recorded by various historical sources, reflects the ethnic diversity of the Cuman-Kipchak Confederation, which included various Turkic and possibly other nomadic tribes such as the Kipchaks, Kun, and Pechenegs. Each of these groups brought their own distinct physical characteristics to the Confederation. For instance, Chinese sources noted fair features like red hair and blue or green eyes among the Kipchak, while Arab chronicler Ibn Fadlan described the Pechenegs as having a dark complexion. Cumans and the Kingdom of Georgia. The initial contacts between the Georgians and Cumans Kipchaks trace back to the 11th century when these nomadic groups formed a confederation in the southern Russian steppes. The Georgian relationship with the Cumans Kipchaks was largely peaceful, with Georgian leaders viewing them as potential allies against Seljuk invasions due to their formidable military skills and significant manpower. King David IV of Georgia, reigning from 1089 to 1125 and known as the Builder, played a crucial role in forging a strong alliance with the Cuman Kipchaks. In 1118, he facilitated the settlement of tens of thousands of Cuman Kipchak warriors and their families in Georgia as part of his military reforms to combat the Seljuk threat. This strategic move included marrying Gurandukt, a Cuman Kipchak princess and daughter of Khan Otrok, enhancing the alliance. David IV's diplomatic efforts extended beyond these marital ties. He negotiated peace between the Cumans Kipchaks and the Alans and coordinated with Vladimir Monomakh of Kievan Rus to ensure safe passage for the Cuman Kipchaks moving to Georgia. This resulted in the relocation of approximately 15,000 Cuman Kipchak soldiers and their families to Georgia, where they were integrated into the Georgian military and settled mainly in frontier regions to defend against the Seljuks. The Cuman Kipchaks adopted a semi-nomadic lifestyle in Georgia, contributing soldiers to the Georgian army as per their settlement agreement. They played a significant role in Georgia's military and social structure, eventually converting to Orthodox Christianity and merging with the local population. Some became known as Nakivchakari, indicating their assimilation and de-Kipchakization, and rose to prominence in the Georgian military aristocracy. During the reign of Queen Tamar, 1184-1213, and her successors, the influence of these Christianized and Georgianized Kipchak officers led to significant shifts in the Georgian aristocracy. However, this integration was not without challenges. In later years, some Cuman Kipchak mercenaries continued to serve in significant numbers, while others joined opposing forces, reflecting the complex and multifaceted nature of their involvement in regional military and political dynamics. The Field of Igor Sviatoslavich's Battle with the Cuman Kipchaks by Viktor Vasnetsov. The Cumans, known as Polovtsi by the Russians, first made contact with the Rus in 1055, when they approached the Pereyaslavl Principality. These encounters initially took the form of raids and military confrontations, as the Cumans sought to exploit the fragmented political state of Russia, which was divided into numerous principalities under the loose oversight of Kiev. An initial agreement was reached between the Cumans and Prince Vsevolod of Pereyaslavl, avoiding conflict. However, by 1061, tensions escalated, and the Cumans, led by chieftain Sokal, launched an invasion into Pereyaslavl, marking the beginning of a prolonged 175-year conflict with the Rus. The Cumans achieved a significant military victory in 1068 at the Battle of the Alta River, where they defeated the armies of Izyaslav I of Kiev, Sviatoslav of Chernigov, and Vsevolod of Pereyaslavl, all sons of Yaroslav the Wise. This victory enabled the Cumans to conduct repeated invasions into Kievan Ruses, leading to widespread devastation and the capture of slaves, who were either kept or sold in southern markets. Despite these conflicts, the relationship between the Russian princes and the Cumans was not solely antagonistic. The Russian principalities, recognizing the military prowess of the Cumans and their control over vast territories of the steppe, sought to form alliances with them, particularly when facing greater threats such as other princely rivals or external invaders like the Byzantines or later the Mongols. These alliances were often sealed through marriages. Russian princes married Cuman princesses, and Cuman Khans took Russian brides, binding the two groups by kinship and mutual interest. Cumans in Romania, Wallachia, and Moldavia. As the Cumans expanded their presence in the Pontic steppe during the 11th and 12th centuries, their influence began to reach the regions that would later form Wallachia and Moldavia. These areas, situated at the crossroads between the steppe and the more forested regions of Eastern Europe, were strategically valuable and became frequent targets for Cuman raids. The Cumans, leveraging their superior mobility and familiarity with the terrain, often conducted swift horseback raids into these territories, which were then under the fragmented rule of various local chieftains and influenced by more powerful neighbors like Hungary and the Byzantine Empire. Despite these initial conflicts, the relationship between the Cumans and the emerging Romanian principalities evolved into one of political and military alliances. As Wallachia and Moldavia began to consolidate into more organized states in the 13th and 14th centuries, their rulers saw the benefits of forming alliances with the Cumans, who could provide military support against external threats. These alliances were often sealed through marriages between the ruling families and the Cuman elites, a common diplomatic practice of the time that aimed to secure loyalty and peace along the borders. One notable instance of such alliances is the foundation of Wallachia by the legendary figure Basarab I, who is believed to have Cuman ancestry. This connection illustrates the deep intertwining of Cuman influence with the formation of the Romanian principalities. The Cumans not only contributed to the military capabilities of these nascent states, but also became part of the social and political fabric of the region. However, the cooperative phase of the Cuman interactions with Wallachia and Moldavia was not without interruptions. The Cumans' allegiance could shift depending on the political landscape and their own tribal interests. There were instances when the Cumans re-engaged in hostilities with the Romanian principalities, particularly when competing interests or external pressures, like the Mongol invasions, disrupted their alliances. Cumans and the Bulgarians. Initially, as the Cumans made their presence felt across Eastern Europe in the 11th century, their relationship with Bulgaria was marked by conflict. Their incursions into Bulgarian territories were part of broader raiding activities that targeted various regions of the Balkans. These raids were often brutal and destabilizing, contributing to the challenges faced by the Bulgarian state, which was already grappling with internal strife and external pressures from the Byzantine Empire. By the late 12th and early 13th centuries, the Bulgarian Empire sought to restore its former power and territorial reach after a period of decline. In this context, the Bulgarian rulers recognized the potential of the Cumans as military allies who could bolster their forces against common adversaries, notably the Byzantines and later the Latin Empire after the Fourth Crusade. During the reign of Tsar Kaloyan of Bulgaria, 1197–1207, Kaloyan strategically utilized Cuman mercenaries to enhance his army's capabilities. The Cumans played a crucial role in several key battles, including the Siege of Constantinople in 1203, where their fierce combat skills were instrumental in challenging the Latin forces. The relationship between the Cumans and Bulgaria was further cemented through marital alliances. Kaloyan himself married a Cuman princess, which not only solidified this strategic partnership, but also integrated Cuman nobility into the Bulgarian royal court. These marriages were part of a broader pattern, in which Bulgarian rulers sought to leverage Cuman connections to stabilize and extend their authority. Despite these periods of cooperation, the alliance was not without its challenges. The Cumans' loyalty was often precarious, swayed by shifting political fortunes and opportunities. Their nomadic and martial nature meant that they could also pose a threat to Bulgarian security, particularly in times when central authority was weak or when lucrative raiding opportunities presented themselves. Cuman and the Byzantine Empire. From the late 11th century, as the Cumans expanded westward into the Pontic steppe, they began to encounter the northern territories of the Byzantine Empire. The Cumans also had a long history as mercenaries in the Byzantine military from the late 11th century. They played pivotal roles in several key battles, including the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. The initial phase of Cuman-Byzantine interactions was predominantly hostile. The Cumans, known for their mobility and military prowess, frequently conducted raids into Byzantine territories, exploiting the empire's political and military weaknesses. Over subsequent decades, Cumans frequently raided Byzantine territories, often in alliance with other nomadic groups like the Pechenegs. Byzantine emperors, aware of the limitations of their military in dealing with such a mobile and unpredictable enemy, often resorted to diplomacy. They sought to neutralize the Cuman threat through treaties and alliances, which included paying tributes and arranging marriages between Cuman leaders and members of the Byzantine nobility. Such alliances were designed to turn the Cumans into a buffer against other nomadic groups and to secure their cooperation or neutrality in Byzantine conflicts with neighboring states. One notable example of these diplomatic efforts was during the reign of Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, 1081–1118, who utilized Cuman forces as part of his military campaigns to defend the empire's borders and to reclaim territories lost to the Seljuks. The Cumans, serving as mercenaries in the Byzantine army, contributed their formidable cavalry skills to the empire's efforts to stabilize and expand its frontiers. The Crusades added another dimension to Cuman-Byzantine interactions. During the Fourth Crusade, the Cumans allied with various Crusader factions, affecting Byzantine strategies and their own standing within the regional power structures. After the sack of Constantinople in 1204, the Byzantine Empire's fragmentation allowed the Cumans to increase their raids and mercenary activities, taking advantage of the empire's weakened state. Initially, the Cumans, migrating westward into the Carpathian Basin during the late 11th and early 12th centuries, posed a significant threat to the Hungarian frontier. Their fierce and mobile cavalry conducted raids deep into Hungarian territories, exploiting the kingdom's vulnerabilities. These raids were part of a broader pattern of nomadic incursions that Central European states frequently faced, compelling Hungary to adapt its military and border defenses to counter the nomadic threat effectively. King Andrew II of Hungary granted the Burzenland region to the Teutonic Knights in 1211, with the purpose of ensuring security of the southeastern borders of his kingdom against the Cumans. In response to these challenges, the Hungarian kings began to seek ways to neutralize the Cuman threat through diplomacy and integration. After the Mongol assault in 1239 fragmented Kipchak unity, the Cumans dispersed, with one branch migrating to the Balkans and another moving to Anatolia. King Bela IV actively recruited Cumans to repopulate and defend the ravaged lands. The king granted them significant autonomous territories within Hungary in exchange for their military service. This policy not only helped to stabilize and secure the kingdom's eastern borders, but also facilitated the integration of Cuman groups into Hungarian society. Over time, the Cumans in Hungary assimilated into the local population, their legacy persisting through contributions to Hungary's military and societal structures. They bolstered the kingdom's military capabilities, particularly in cavalry warfare, which was crucial against both external invasions and internal rebellions. Moreover, the Cumans contributed to the cultural diversity of the kingdom. Decline and fall of the Cumans. The Mongol expansion under Genghis Khan and his successors was the primary catalyst for the decline of the Cumans. By the early 13th century, the Mongol forces had begun to move westward, reaching the Cuman-controlled territories in the Pontic steppe around 1220. Facing relentless Mongol advances, Khan Khotan fled to the court of Prince Mstislav, the Bold of Galich, warning him of the Mongol threat. Despite initial reluctance, the Russes eventually allied with the Cumans as the Mongol threat loomed larger. The Cumans, despite their formidable reputation as warriors, were unable to withstand the organized and relentless Mongol military campaigns. The Battle of Kalka River in 1223 was a decisive confrontation where the Mongols defeated a coalition of Russo-Cumans forces. This defeat significantly weakened Cuman power and marked the beginning of their decline. Following their military defeats, many Cumans fled westward to avoid Mongol domination. Their migration brought them into the territories of the Kingdom of Hungary, the Bulgarian Empire, and other parts of the Balkans, where they sought refuge and a new place to settle. In Hungary, King Bela IV offered the Cumans land and protection in exchange for military service against the Mongol threat. This settlement was part of Bela's broader strategy to rebuild and fortify his kingdom after the devastating Mongol invasions of Hungary. The Mamluks were warrior slaves in the Islamic world. Many Mamluks were of Cuman origin by January Suchodolski. A number of Cuman captives sold into slavery rose to prominence as Mamluks in Egypt. Remarkably, they played a crucial role in defeating the Mongols at key battles, such as Ain Jalut and Elbistan, under the leadership of Sultan Baybars. By around 1240, some Cumans sought refuge in the Latin Empire of Constantinople. Leaders like Jonas and Saronius, likely a corruption of the Cuman name Sichgon, allied with Emperor Baldwin II. Some Cumans found refuge within the Mongol-led Golden Horde in the territories of what is now southwest Russia. These Cumans assimilated with local populations, including the Tatars, influencing the Mongol elite by transferring their cultural traits, customs, and language. During the late 13th and early 14th centuries, the Cumans within this framework converted to Islam, aligning religiously with the dominant Turco-Mongol culture of the horde. Over time, the pressures of living under new political structures and the need to adapt to different economic systems led to the gradual assimilation of the Cumans. They adopted Christianity or Islam, intermarried with local populations, and became part of the feudal systems of their new homelands. By the end of the 13th century and into the 14th century, the Cumans had largely disappeared as a distinct entity. Their legacy, however, persisted in the genetic, cultural, and political fabric of Eastern Europe. Chapter 2. Military Prowess and Strategies of the Cumans. The Cuman-Kipchak realm, despite its vast expanse from the Danube to Taraz, Kazakhstan, lacked a unified central government. This confederation consisted of tribal units, each led by individual khans, without collective political cohesion. The military organization of the Cumans was emblematic of their broader societal structure, characterized by flexibility, mobility, and a hierarchical yet fluid leadership that allowed them to swiftly adapt to the changing dynamics of warfare and alliances. The Cumans were primarily known for their expertise in mounted warfare, leveraging their nomadic lifestyle, which was intrinsically linked to horseback riding from a young age. Military organization of the Cumans. The Cumans organized their military forces based on tribal lines, with each tribe capable of raising a significant number of warriors when needed. Leadership was typically vested in the Khan or tribal chief, who commanded loyalty and obedience, albeit often challenged by rival factions within the tribe. This decentralized command structure enabled rapid mobilization of forces and allowed them to cover vast territories quickly, but it could also lead to internal divisions, particularly when forming larger alliances or facing significant external threats. Key tactics and innovations. The Cumans, predominantly light cavalry warriors until the late 11th and early 12th centuries, evolved to include heavy cavalry elements influenced by European martial practices. Their primary weaponry consisted of recurved and later composite bows, carried on the hip alongside a quiver. They also used javelins, curved swords, maces, and heavy spears for lancing. Over time, some Cumans adopted war hammers and axes due to European influence. For defense, the Cumans employed round or almond-shaped shields, short-sleeved mail armor featuring alternating solid and riveted rows, and lamellar armor made from iron or leather. Their protective gear also included leather cuirasses, shoulder spalders, and conical or dome-shaped iron helmets with detachable anthropomorphic faceplates, bronze or iron generally, but gold for high-ranking figures like princes and khans. Additional protection came from leather or felt discs on the chest and back, and sometimes a camail of chain or leather hung from the helmet. The Cumans' attire included a bow case, a quiver, a knife, and a comb attached to their belts. They also wore elaborate face-covering battle masks. The Cuman Mamluks in Egypt in particular were more heavily armed than their Mongol counterparts, utilizing an array of weapons and wearing body armor. They rode larger Arabian horses, distinct from the smaller steppe breeds. Tactically, the Cumans excelled in mobile archery, conducting hit-and-run attacks and feigned retreats followed by ambushes. This required maintaining a large number of reserve horses, 10-12 remounts per warrior, to ensure continuous mobility. Their equipment also included oval-shaped stirrups, extensive bridles for controlling their horses, and a whip attached to the wrist for directing the horse. Tribal banners, significant in Cuman culture, showcased cloth with tribal emblems or dyed horsehair, with the number of tails indicating the warrior's or group's prominence. As they moved westward, some Cumans blended their heraldry with European styles, reflecting their integration and adaptation to Western martial influences. Significant battles and campaigns. The Cumans were involved in numerous significant battles and campaigns, often as mercenaries or allies to various regional powers. One notable engagement was the Battle of Kalka River in 1223, where the Cumans, allied with Rus's principalities, faced the Mongol invaders. Although ultimately defeated, the tactics used by the Cumans during this battle showcased their ability to engage superior forces using hit-and-run tactics and coordinated withdrawals, which later influenced Mongol military strategies. Another example of their strategic impact was their involvement in the Battle of Livonian in 1091, where the Cumans fought as allies of the Byzantine Empire against the Pechenegs. The Cumans played a crucial role in the victory, utilizing their cavalry to outmaneuver and decisively defeat the Pecheneg forces, which had besieged Constantinople. The military strategies of the Cumans not only defined their own successes and failures, but also had a lasting impact on the warfare tactics of the regions they interacted with. Their integration into various European armies following their migration westward due to Mongol pressures further disseminated their tactical approaches, particularly their mastery of mounted archery and mobile warfare. This legacy is evident in the subsequent evolution of cavalry tactics across the medieval European and Eurasian battlefields. Chapter 3: Economic Impact and Trade Networks of the Cumans. Their strategic positioning along key trade routes, including segments of the Silk Road, allowed them to facilitate and capitalize on the flow of goods between Asia and Europe. Commerce was a crucial aspect of Cuman activity, particularly in Crimea, where they exerted significant influence. The city of Sudak in Crimea emerged as a major commercial hub under Cuman control, facilitating trade between Central Asia and Venice and specializing in goods like furs and slaves. Role in the Silk Road and medieval trade routes. Occupying the vast expanses of the Pontic-Caspian steppe, the Cumans were perfectly placed to control and benefit from the trade routes that traversed this area. These routes were vital arteries of the Silk Road that connected the eastern markets with the Western world, carrying silk, spices, precious metals, and other valuable commodities. The Cumans leveraged their control over these routes to extract tolls and taxes from the merchants and caravans that passed through their territory. This not only enriched their tribes, but also enabled them to exert considerable economic influence over neighboring regions. Furthermore, the Cumans engaged in direct trade themselves, dealing in horses, furs, leather, honey, and slaves. Their horses, highly prized for their quality and endurance, were especially sought after in markets from Byzantium to Baghdad. The trade in furs and slaves also tied them economically to the Rus's principalities, the Byzantine Empire, and the Islamic states to the south. Economic strategies and regional impact. The economic strategies of the Cumans involved a mix of nomadic herding and active participation in regional trade networks. Their nomadic lifestyle was well suited to the conditions of the steppe, focusing on livestock, which was both the basis of their diet and a primary economic resource. The wealth generated from their control over trade routes allowed the Cumans to maintain a degree of economic autonomy and influence, enabling them to form alliances with powerful neighbors or resist them when necessary. The Cumans' economic impact on the regions they controlled was profound. By regulating trade routes, they influenced the economic well-being of other polities and could cause significant shifts in local markets. Their control of commodity flows also allowed them to act as gatekeepers, deciding which goods would enter the European markets from Asia and vice versa. Contributions to the economic dynamics of the Eurasian steppes. The Cumans contributed significantly to the economic dynamics of the Eurasian steppes. Their activities helped bridge the economic divide between the nomadic and sedentary worlds. By integrating themselves into the broader economic systems of the Silk Road, they facilitated cultural and economic exchanges that would have long-lasting impacts on the regions involved. Moreover, the presence of the Cumans along these critical trade routes helped to maintain the continuity of trade during periods of political instability. Their role as intermediaries in trade contributed to the economic resilience of the Silk Road network, ensuring that despite the frequent conflicts and shifts in power typical of the medieval period, trade continued to flow across continents. Chapter 4. Cultural influence and integration of the Cumans. The Cumans, through their widespread interactions and integrations with various cultures across Eastern Europe and Central Asia, left a substantial imprint on the cultural landscapes of these regions. Their contributions spanned various domains, including art, music, literature, and more, reflecting their adaptability and influence as they merged with local societies. Lifestyle of the Cumans. The Cumans were renowned for their nomadic lifestyle, migrating seasonally with their herds of horses, sheep, goats, camels, and cattle. They engaged not only in animal husbandry, but also in various crafts, such as blacksmithing, furriery, shoemaking, saddle-making, bow-making, and clothes-making. The Cumans utilized feeding sacks attached to their horses' bridles, which allowed them to travel great distances with minimal stops, making them effective in long-range campaigns. Cumans were known for their distinctive attire, such as sheepskin clothing and conical hats. Social structure of the Cumans. Cuman society was organized around familial and clan structures, with a group of families forming a clan led by a chief, and multiple clans forming a tribe under the leadership of a Khan. Their clans and tribes were often named after physical objects, animals, or the clan leader, and their settlements, referred to as Cuman towers by Kievan Rus chroniclers, were movable, reflecting their nomadic nature. Contributions to art, music, and literature. In the realm of art, the Cumans contributed to the visual culture of the regions they inhabited with distinctive jewelry, metalwork, and textiles, which often bore unique geometric and animal motifs characteristic of the steppe nomadic traditions. These artifacts, frequently unearthed in kurgans, burial mounds across Eastern Europe, exhibit a blend of Turkic and local influences, showcasing the syncretic nature of Cuman art. Musically, the Cumans likely influenced the folk traditions of the areas they settled, introducing Central Asian musical instruments and styles. Their nomadic heritage brought distinct sounds and musical traditions to the sedentary cultures of Eastern Europe, enriching the local music scenes and contributing to a shared musical heritage that can still be traced today in the folk music of the region. In literature, while the Cumans did not leave a written legacy, their stories and legends were woven into the literary fabrics of the cultures they touched. In medieval chronicles and epic poems of the Slavic and Hungarian peoples, for example, Cumans are often depicted in various roles, from fearsome warriors to noble allies, illustrating their significant role in the historical and mythical narratives of these societies. Integration with other cultures through marriage and diplomacy. Cultural integration for the Cumans also occurred through strategic marriages and diplomacy. By intermarrying with local nobilities, such as the royal families of Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Rus principalities, the Cumans forged strong familial and political ties that facilitated their assimilation into these societies. These marriages not only helped to stabilize political alliances, but also led to the cultural assimilation of the Cumans, blending their customs and traditions with those of their new homelands. Chapter 5. Religious Beliefs and Syncretism of the Cumans. The religious landscape of the Cumans, like many aspects of their culture, was dynamic and characterized by a blend of traditional shamanistic beliefs and the later adoption of major world religions such as Christianity and Islam. This syncretism was not only a reflection of their adaptability, but also played a crucial role in their interactions with neighboring states and in the internal governance of their society. Religion of the Cumans. Before Christianity and Islam. Initially, the Cumans practiced a form of Tengrism and shamanism, which was common among Turkic nomadic tribes. Their belief system was deeply connected to the natural world, with a strong emphasis on the spiritual significance of the sky, earth, and water. Shamans, serving as both spiritual leaders and healers, played a pivotal role in Cuman society, mediating between the community and the spiritual world. These religious leaders were crucial in rituals and ceremonies that sought the favor of spirits for success in battle, fertility, and the prosperity of the tribe. Adoption of Christianity and Islam. As the Cumans expanded into Europe and came into contact with more settled monotheistic societies, they gradually began to adopt Christianity and Islam. This adoption was significantly influenced by political and social interactions, particularly through alliances and marriages with Christian states such as Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Byzantine Empire, and through trade and warfare with Muslim powers in the Middle East and the Volga-Bulgaria region. The conversion to Christianity was especially notable in the regions where Cumans settled among Christian populations. In Hungary, for instance, the integration of the Cumans included their conversion to Roman Catholicism, which was part of a broader strategy by the Hungarian kings to assimilate them into the kingdom's feudal structure. Similarly, in the Byzantine and Bulgarian territories, orthodoxy became prevalent among the Cumans. These conversions were not merely spiritual, but also pragmatic, facilitating smoother integration into Christian societies and reinforcing political alliances. Islam made significant inroads among the Cumans, primarily through their interactions with the Islamic states to the south and east. The adoption of Islam was partly due to the influence of Muslim merchants and the prestige of Islamic culture in the trade networks across the steppe. Conclusion. The Cumans' legacy in modern history is evident across various domains. Culturally and genetically, they contributed to the diversity of Eastern Europe, influencing local traditions, genetics, and folklore. Their advanced military tactics, especially in cavalry warfare, impacted medieval military strategies throughout Europe. Economically, the Cumans facilitated significant trade on the Silk Road, enhancing cultural and technological exchanges between East and West. Their adoption of Christianity and Islam helped integrate them into local societies, enriching the religious landscape of the regions they settled. Politically, their influence shaped the early state formation and aristocratic structures in countries like Hungary and Bulgaria. Despite their assimilation, the enduring legacy of the Cumans continues to influence these regions' historical and cultural narratives.
We offer you deep historical information from history on YouTube channel. Subscribe. Now don't forget to turn on notifications.